Hey my culty crime crew, it's Bubbles, your host, and welcome back to another episode of Cozy Cults and Crimes. Now, I know things have been a little quiet on my end lately, but I promise it's for a good reason. I've been channeling my inner Martha Stewart, transforming my office space into a true crime haven that'll make even the most hardened cult leader feel right at home. Think spooky decor, cozy blankets, and enough evidence boards to solve a whole season's worth of mysteries. But to be honest, I can't do it alone. I actually need your help, my culty crime crew. I'm putting together a bit of a special art project for my Cozy Crime Corner, and I would love your input. So stay tuned for the end of the episode for more details. But before we get too deep into the darkness, I want to catch up with you all. How's your weeks been? Mine has been a whirlwind, as usual, but one thing that has been keeping me grounded again is the Olympics. Watching those athletes just go for gold in the pool, on the track, in every sport, puts my couch potato skills to shame, really. They're out there pushing their absolute limits and achieving the impossible, while I'm just here curled up on the couch, researching my cults and my murder mysteries. But hey, someone's just got to do it, right? And why not be me? Speaking of excitement, tonight's episode is going to be a real roller coaster ride. We're ditching the bright lights and bustling cities for a journey into the heart of northern Mexico, to the vast and unforgiving I'm sorry, this word really has been getting to me while I've been studying this case this week. It's Chihuahua. That's how it's spelled, but it's not how it's pronounced. Chihuahuan. It's the largest desert in North America, stretching across parts of Mexico and the southwestern United States. It is here in this remote and seemingly peaceful landscape that a dark and twisted tale unfolded. A tale of faith turned to fanaticism, of family bonds twisted into a web of manipulation and murder. It's a tale of a community called Chihuahua LeBaron, where a charismatic leader named Ervil LeBaron would lead his followers and family down an unimaginable path of violence. But before we dive headfirst into this twisted tale, I want to remind you that this episode is going to contain discussions of violence, murder, and some other sensitive topics. So if that's not your cup of tea tonight, no worries. There are plenty of other cozy cults and crimes episodes to choose from. But if you are ready to face the darkness with me this week, then let's gather around this virtual campfire and get started. Alright guys, let's rewind to 1925, way back in the heart of Chihuahua LeBaron. This little community was tucked away in the middle of nowhere, smack dab in the middle of the vast Chihuahuan, there we go, I got it, Chihuahuan Desert in northern Mexico. This place is huge. It encompasses a large portion of the state of Chihuahua, along with parts of Coahuila, northeastern Durango, and the extreme northern part of Zacatecas, and a small western portion of Nuevo Leon. I hope I have pronounced all those places correctly. It also extends into parts of western Texas, southern New Mexico, and southeastern Arizona. So you can just imagine how large it really is, this place. Like, it is huge. It's a land of extremes where survival is a constant challenge. It's far removed from the bustling cities and modern conveniences of the outside world. Colonial LeBaron was self-contained, a sanctuary for those seeking to live according to their own strict interpretation of Mormon fundamentalism. Now, this is the same thing that the FLDS church follows, like fundamentalism, that's like the same thing. Now picture this, a bunch of adobe houses, kind of like those clay huts you see in old Western movies, all clustered together and surrounded by fields of crops and livestock. The sun beats down like a relentless drummer, casting long shadows across the dusty ground, and the only sounds you can hear are the wind whistling through the canyons, the bleating of goats, and the whispers of prayers rising up to the sky. It was in this remote and isolated community that young Ervil LeBaron entered this world. Growing up in Colonial LeBaron, Ervil's childhood was anything but idyllic. From a young age, he witnessed the harsh realities of life in the Chihuahua Desert, where survival depended on hard work and unwavering faith. Even as a young boy, Ervil displayed a deep fascination with Mormon scriptures, often retreating to the solitude of the desert to immerse himself in prayer and contemplation. Ervil's father, Alma, was a strict disciplinarian who ruled his family with an iron fist. He instilled in his children a deep sense of religious devotion, but also a fear of punishment for any perceived transgressions. This environment fostered a climate of obedience and conformity, but it also sowed the seeds of resentment and rebellion in young Ervil's heart. Now, Ervil was a bit of a loner growing up. He was kind of shy, quiet, compared to his siblings, who always seemed to be the life of the party. Never really felt like he fit in with family, always feeling like he was on the outside looking in. This feeling of being left out just got worse as he got older, making him crave attention and acceptance. But he had his struggles. Ervil was a smart kid. He devoured religious texts, seeking answers to life's big questions and a deeper understanding of his faith. But as he delved deeper into the scriptures, the more his ideas started to clash with what everyone else in the community believed. He'd get into heated debates with his dad and other elders, challenging their interpretations of the scriptures. As Ervil grew up and became a man, his ambition started to kick into high gear. He wanted to be a leader, to shake things up in Colonial LeBaron. He thought he had a vision for a brighter future, but his ideas were a little too out there for some of the old-timers in charge. They just didn't get him, and that rejection made him even more determined to prove them wrong. In 1972, Ervil took a drastic step, breaking away from the main group and establishing his own church in San Diego, California, the Church of the Firstborn Lamb of God. It was here that Ervil's twisted interpretations of faith began to take a sinister turn. He preached a doctrine of blood atonement, a long rejected Mormon belief that certain sins could only be forgiven through the shedding of the sinner's blood. This very dangerous ideology would soon become the cornerstone of his reign of terror. Later that same year, the simmering tensions between the brothers Joel and Ervil reached a boiling point. Convinced of his own divine right, Ervil orchestrated a devastating betrayal. His brother Joel LeBaron was assassinated in Mexico by two of Ervil's followers, Daniel Jordan and Dwayne Chinaworth. It was a chilling act of fratricide that sent shockwaves through the community. The assassination of Joel marked a turning point in Ervil's life, a descent into a world of violence and bloodshed. He had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. The once peaceful community of Colonial LeBaron was now irrecoverably divided, and Ervil's thirst for power would only grow stronger in the years to come. Ervil, now the undisputed leader of his splinter group, intensified his campaign of terror. He declared himself the one mighty and strong, the prophet destined to cleanse the world of those he deemed wicked and unfaithful. His followers, entranced by his charisma and promises of salvation, clung to his every word, their devotion unwavering even as darkness gathered round them. Ervil's twisted interpretation of the doctrine of blood atonement, the belief that someone's sins could only be absolved through the shedding of their blood, became his twisted justification for a series of brutal murders. He targeted not only other rival religious leaders, but those who dared to challenge his authority, and also former followers who had strayed from his path. Even his own family members weren't safe from his wrath. His brother Verlin became a target, and tragically his own young daughters, Rebecca and Lillian, would also fall victim to his deadly decrees. This once peaceful community, a sanctuary built on faith and family, was now gripped by an insidious fear as neighbour turned against neighbour, family member against family member, and trust evaporated like the morning dew in the scorching desert sun. The list of victims grew longer and longer, their names etched into the annals of Ervil's dark legacy. Rivals, former followers, even innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire of his fanatical crusade. The violence escalated, casting a pall of fear over the entire region. Law enforcement agencies scrambled to catch the elusive cult leader and his murderous disciples. But Ervil remained one step ahead, his cunning and ruthlessness ensuring his survival. In the wake of Joel's murder, Mexican authorities launched a manhunt for Ervil LeBaron. He was quickly identified as the mastermind behind the assassination and apprehended in Ensenada, Baja California in 1974. The trial that followed was a media spectacle, with Ervil proclaiming his innocence and casting himself as a martyr, persecuted for his beliefs. Despite overwhelming evidence, including the testimony of his own followers and family members who had turned against him, Ervil's charisma and legal manoeuvring managed to sway the court. In a shocking turn of events, Ervil's conviction was overturned on a technicality. The court ruled that there were irregularities with the extradition process from Mexico to the USA, casting doubt on the legality of his arrest and detention. So in 1975, Ervil LeBaron walked free, a vindicated prophet in the eyes of his followers. But his thirst for power was far from quenched. The taste of freedom only fueled his ambition, and he set his sights on expanding his influence and eliminating any perceived threats to his authority. Ervil's release marked the beginning of a new and even darker chapter in his twisted saga. The following years would see a reign of terror unleashed upon the LeBaron community and beyond, as Ervil's thirst for blood and vengeance reached dramatic new heights. The 2 years following Ervil's release were a whirlwind of activity. He wasted no time at all in consolidating his power, gathering his loyal followers around him, and spreading his twisted doctrine of blood atonement. The cult's influence grew, reaching far beyond the confines of colonial LeBaron, and the seeds of future violence were sown. From one of his hidden locations, the Los Molinos Ranch, a community led by his own brother Verlin, became a focal point of his twisted obsession. Ervil meticulously planned a massacre, his words dripping with venom as he penned his chilling orders. He saw Verlin as a traitor, a usurper who had stolen his rightful place as a leader. And so he decreed that blood must be spilled to atone for this perceived transgression. On a fateful day, September 14th, in 1977, Ervil's followers, acting on his orders from afar, stormed the Los Molinos Ranch, their guns blazing. The targets were not just the rival religious leaders, but also innocent women and children. The brutality was unimaginable. Ervil's own brother, Don, his two young daughters, Natasha and Jenny, and an innocent bystander, Fernando Rios, were among the victims. Their lives cut short in a hail of bullets. The gunmen showed no mercy, their faces contorted with the twisted sense of righteousness as they carried out their leader's twisted will. Oh, it makes me sick. The massacre sent shockwaves through the community, shattering any remaining illusions of peace and harmony. The survivors were left to grapple with the devastating loss of their loved ones, their faith in their leader irreparably shaken. The once tight-knit community was now fractured, its wounds deep and festering. But even as the community mourned its dead, evil's reign of terror continued on. The Los Molinos massacre was no isolated incident, but rather a chilling prelude to a series of even more audacious and brutal attacks. The cult's reach extended far beyond the isolated desert now, its tendrils stretching into the heart of Salt Lake City, Utah. Only months before the Los Molinos bloodshed, Ervil had already set his sights on another target, orchestrating a high-profile murder that would send ripples of fear far beyond the confines of colonial LeBaron. Back in the May of 1997, remember the Los Molinos massacre was in the September, Ervil orchestrated the assassination of one Rulon C. Allred, a respected chiropractor and leader of another rival polygamous group. Two women who were extremely close to Ervil, his wife, Rena Chenoweth, and his stepdaughter, Ramona Marston, disguised themselves as nurses, entered Allred's office under the pretense of seeking treatment, but their true purpose was far more sinister. In a moment of cold-blooded violence, they opened fire, fatally shooting Allred multiple times and injuring two others in the office. This brazen act of violence shattered the peace and quiet of the community and sent shockwaves throughout the nation. It was a chilling demonstration of the cult's willingness to strike anywhere at any time, to silence any who dared to challenge their leader's authority. The assassination of Rulon Allred was a turning point, a moment that brought the LeBaron cult's reign of terror into the national spotlight. The investigation into Allred's murder was a complex and challenging one, with Ervil, still a fugitive from previous crimes, orchestrating events from hidden locations in Mexico and the US. But the pieces of the puzzle were slowly falling into place. The connection between the assassins and Ervil's cult became increasingly clear, and the net was closing in on the elusive prophet. Informants within the cult, their consciences burdened with the escalating violence, began to cooperate with the authorities. Their testimonies painted a chilling picture of Ervil's control over his followers, and his willingness to use them as instruments in his twisted will. The evidence against Ervil mounted, and the pressure on Mexican authorities to apprehend him grew even stronger. Finally, in 1979, after years on the run, Ervil LeBaron was apprehended by Mexican police. He was extradited to the United States to face trial for the murder of Rulon Allred. This trial again was another media sensation, with the nation captivated by chilling details of the cult's activities. The evidence against Ervil was overwhelming, and he was found guilty this time of orchestrating Allred's murder. In 1980, he was sentenced to life in prison, his reign of terror seemingly at an end. But his imprisonment did not bring an end to the violence. In fact, it was just the beginning of an even darker chapter in this twisted tale. Because even from behind bars, Ervil's influence remained potent. His words a toxic poison seeping into the minds of his followers. And unfortunately, these followers were young men. which is even sadder in my opinion. From his prison cell, Ervil continued to exert his control over his followers, his words weaving a tapestry of paranoia and vengeance. He penned countless letters and sermons, filled with vitriol and apocalyptic prophecies. His most chilling creation was the infamous, quote, 4 o'clock list, a roster of individuals marked for execution. Ervil meticulously compiled this list, each name a target in his twisted game of divine retribution. The list included not only rival religious leaders, but also former members of the cult who had dared to defy his authority. Even his own family members weren't safe from his wrath, their names scrawled in Ervil's own hand. The arbitrary nature of the list, with its chilling reference to the hour of execution, created an atmosphere of constant dread and uncertainty. The word of the 4 o'clock list spread like wildfire throughout the community, its existence a terrifying spectre hanging over everyone's heads. Fear and paranoia gripped Chihuahua LeBaron, as people whispered in hushed tones, wondering if their name was next on Ervil's list. The once tight-knit community was now fractured, its members living in constant fear of the knock on the door that could signal their impending doom. Ervil's followers, their minds warped by his teachings, took his words as gospel. They saw themselves as instruments of his divine retribution, their hands guided by the will of their imprisoned prophet. They awaited his orders, their hearts filled with a twisted sense of purpose. The tension mounted with each passing day and year as the community braced itself for the inevitable violence that was to come. But even as the shadow of the 4 o'clock list loomed large, Ervil's own life was drawing to a close. In 1981, he was found dead in his cell at Utah State Prison. His death was ruled a suicide by hanging, but the circumstances surrounding it remained shrouded in mystery, fueling speculation and conspiracy theories to this day. Ervil's death brought a sense of relief to some, a final end to a reign of terror. But for others, it was merely a pause in a storm. The eye of the storm, I guess. The seeds of violence he had sown had taken root, and the spectre of the 4 o'clock list continued to haunt those connected to the cult. There was a period of uneasy calm that would pass by now. But in the end, the clock would strike 4, and the prophecy of the 4 o'clock murders would be fulfilled in a night of brutal bloodshed that would shock the nation again. A whole 7 years after Ervil's death, the spectre of the 4 o'clock list finally materialised in the night of brutal bloodshed on June 27th, 1988. A group of Ervil's most fanatical followers, orchestrated by his 15th wife, Anna LeBaron, carried out a series of coordinated attacks, targeting individuals named on the infamous list. The first victim was Dwayne Chenoweth, one of the men who had carried out the assassination of Ervil's brother Joel. He was shot multiple times in his Houston apartment, his life ending in a hail of bullets. The irony was a bit chilling. A man who had once been an instrument of Ervil's vengeance had now fallen victim to it. Next, the killers struck in Irving, Texas, targeting Mark Chenoweth, Dwayne's brother. He was shot dead in his car as he left for work, his wife and children witnessing the horrific scene. The assassins, believed to be Ervil's own sons from different mothers, showed no remorse, their actions a testament to the twisted loyalty instilled in them by their father. The final attack took place in Murray, Utah, where Ed Marston, another former cult member, and Ervil's own stepson was targeted. The gunmen, including Ervil's sons Herbert and Andrew, burst into his home, shooting him and his wife Brenda. Tragically, their 14-year-old daughter Cynthia was also killed in the crossfire, a heartbreaking reminder of the indiscriminate nature of the cult's violence. These murders sent shockwaves through the nation and the world really, even now, reigniting the fear and horror associated with the LeBaron cult. It was a stark reminder that Ervil's legacy of violence lived on, even in his absence after his death. The murder also sparked a renewed investigation into the cult's current activities, leading to the arrest and conviction of several of Ervil's followers, including his sons and wives. These murders served a chilling reminder of the enduring power of Ervil LeBaron's ideology, even years after his death, and the devastating consequences of blind obedience. This is a dark and chilling chapter in the history of religious extremism. But as always, light can be found in the darkest of times, and the stories of resilience of the human spirit will always shine through the brightest. In the aftermath of the 4 o'clock murders, the LeBaron community faced a long and arduous journey of healing and rebuilding. Many former cult members, they're all family members too, really, when you think about it. In some way or another, they're all related. They were all disillusioned and traumatized by their experiences. They sought to distance themselves from Ervil's legacy and forge a new path forward. The once tight-knit community, torn apart by fear and violence, now had to confront the painful reality of their past and try to find a way to move forward. The road to recovery was not an easy one. Many survivors struggled with the psychological scars left by years of manipulation and abuse. They grappled with feelings of guilt, shame, and betrayal, their trust in others shattered. But amidst the pain, there were also stories of extraordinary courage and resilience. The LeBaron cult was unique in the majority of its members were really related by blood or marriage. This familial connection created a powerful bond that Ervil ruthlessly exploited. He twisted the concept of family loyalty, using it as a weapon to control and manipulate his followers. The fear of being ostracized from their loved ones, coupled with the belief that Ervil was their divinely appointed leader and father in many cases, made it incredibly difficult for individuals to break free. Anna LeBaron, Ervil's own daughter and obviously former cult member, eloquently put it in her memoir, The Polygamous Daughter, quote, "Leaving was like being born again, but into a world I didn't know how to live in." The process of leaving a cult is often described as a reverse Stockholm syndrome. These bonds formed within these higher control groups can be incredibly strong, even when they're rooted in fear and manipulation. Breaking free requires immense courage and a willingness to face the unknown. And when those bonds are intertwined with family ties, the struggle is even more profound. Dr. Jana Lalich, a renowned cult expert and an author of the book Bounded Choice, True Believers and Charismatic Cults, explains, quote, "Leaving a cult is not about just physically walking away. It's about reclaiming your mind, your identity, and your sense of self." The journey of recovery for any cult survivors is often long and arduous. They may struggle with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and a profound sense of loss and betrayal. But with the right support and resources, healing is possible. Many former members of the LeBaron cult have gone on to lead very fulfilling lives, finding love, building families, and contributing to their communities. The legacy of Ervil LeBaron is a complex one. A tapestry woven from threads of faith, fanaticism, and the enduring power of the human spirit. It's a story that serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of critical thinking. But it's also a story of hope, of the resilience of human spirit and the possibility of redemption, even in the face of unimaginable darkness. Well, guys, that's it for the case of Ervil. Oh, I've tried so hard not to do that all episode. Ervil LeBaron and the LeBaron cult. I'm not going to lie, this one was a bit tough for me. It wasn't just the violence and manipulation, but the fact that this was a family, and these were family members killing family members. It just breaks my heart. I also want to say, I know true crime can be a bit of an escape for some of us. I know it is for me. It's a way to distract ourselves from our own problems or just the general craziness of the world around us. But sometimes these stories can also hit a little bit too close to home, bringing up some of our own traumas or anxieties. And you know what? It's okay. And it's okay to feel those things. If you are feeling triggered or overwhelmed by this episode, or anything else for that matter, please don't ever hesitate to reach out for help. There are people around you who care and want to support you. In Australia, you can contact Lifeline Australia on 13 11 14. They're available 24/7 and provide crisis support and suicide prevention services. You can also visit their website at lifeline.org.au. If you're outside of Australia, you can find support through Befrienders Worldwide. They offer emotional support and crisis intervention services in many, many countries. You can find their contact information at befrienders.org. Okay, now that we've taken that small moment for some self-care and reflection, I want to switch gears and get to some fun stuff. Get to some fun stuff. So remember at the start of the episode when I mentioned I had a bit of an art project going on? Well, here it is. I'm creating a giant pegboard thing to hang behind me during future episodes. Hint, hint, you're going to be able to see it. It's going to be covered in all these little hooks with these little wooden bookmarks and things that are going to have your names and handles of all my culty crew members. So you guys, that way I have all of you here with me watching my back as I delve into these twisted tales. Because I'm going to be real with you, you're the reason I do this podcast. And I want you to be part of it with me in every way possible. So, with this all in mind, if you can head over to my Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook page, I'm cozy at cozy.cults.crimes on all three, and that's cozy with a Z, and subscribe or follow. I'll be adding your names or handles to the back of these awesome little bookmarks and coaster things that I've got to go up, and they're going to become a permanent fixture in my little cozy crime corner. And with that, my culty crime crew, we are at the end of another episode, which seems insane to me. This is episode 11 and I've got so many more planned already. So I really hope you'll be back to join me again next week for another journey into the shadowy yet strangely comforting world of cozy cults and crimes. Or, as always, my crew, remember to stay safe, stay spooky, and never lose sight of the light in the darkness. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Bubbles, and I'll see you next time. Bye!